You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 65, the John Lord Tribute Special. And coming to you from the thunderstorming suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And here I am, coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, your co-host, John, the Independent Man Matola.
The Independent Man. All right. Well, I do know this one, so tell our guests.
You do?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I do. I have a story about the Independent Man.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Standing 11 feet tall and 278 feet above ground, the Independent Man is a gold-covered bronze statue that is on top of the State House in Rhode Island, placed there in December 1899.
Mm-hmm.
And what, pray tell, is your story about the Independent Man?
Well, I've got a few stories. First off,
I have none.
so when I was a kid, we would drive down. So we would drive down 146, and it merges right onto Route 95, which goes through Rhode Island and basically through the entire East Coast. And as soon as you get on 95 from 146, maybe a half a mile later, you're right there at the State House. You see the Independent Man, and every single time we went up there, my dad would nudge me in the passenger seat and be like, "See the Independent Man up there?" He's like, once a year they have to take him down so that he can go to the bathroom. And his father used to say the same thing to him. So, of course, when I was driving my kids past a couple years ago when I was visiting, I told them and passed along the family tradition. And then,
oh, it's such a dad thing to say.
And then this is very weird that this ties in this way. So, so the State House of Rhode Island, if you haven't seen it, it's a beautiful building. Looks very much like the Capitol building in DC. And the dome, I think they said it's like the third largest unsupported dome in the world or something. Yep. Very beautiful dome. And a good friend of ours, his father was the lieutenant governor of the state of Rhode Island. So we used to hang out with him a lot and went to go visit him at the State House and told him about how it was the largest unsupported dome or whatever. And he's like, "Oh, I didn't even know that." He didn't seem to know anything about it, which was really funny. And interestingly enough, his son is going to be guesting on the very next episode of the Deep Purple Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
This is just
little trivia there.
Yeah, which just kind of worked out. Well, I know you didn't plan that, but you did. You knew that he was going to be guesting, but
or maybe I did. I didn't know how it would all tie in, so I guess
it tied in a neat bow. You should have saved it for next episode.
Crap, let's start over.
It would have been great to see if we could stump him and see if he knew what the Independent Man was. He'd be like, "I don't know, I'd never heard of it." It's funny because the governor, we'd be visiting his house, and the governor would call every so often, and Dave would answer the phone. He'd just be this great moment where he was speaking to the governor, and he'd always like get the phone, and he'd say hello, and he'd be like, "Oh, Bruce." And he just like, so our buddy Dave would be like talking to the governor, but Bruce, he's like, "Dad, Bruce is on the phone." That's funny. But anyway.
Oh man, I can picture it.
So a great Rhode Island fact for you there. If you want to help support the show, you can do so in Apple Podcasts by leaving us a 5-star review or rating and review. Review would be great as well. You can subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that nonsense. All of our show notes are at deeppurplepodcast.com. And you can become a patron on Patreon. You can also join us on PayPal and join one of our buddies who is now moved on to the PayPal world and avoided the tax. He's created a tax haven for himself on PayPal.
Hey,
He
any
set
way
up
you
a
can.
shell corporation so he can pay us through PayPal.
It's
But
just like a real life episode of Ozark over here.
yeah, I've heard of that show, but I still have not seen it. Coming in at the $20 tier, we have Ryan M. The $20. We still have to figure out a name for the $20 tier.
Oh, gee.
How many
Gee
episodes have we been
whiz.
saying
My
this?
God. I don't know. I think I got to make a note here so we can get on top of this.
Yes. Make a note.
Name $20 tier. Actually, you know what we should do? You should just tweet it out and have
Or just, hey, Ryan, let us know what you want the $20 tier to be named.
Yeah, let's ask him, what do you want to name your tier?
Yeah, $20, you can name it whatever the hell you want. At the $15 highball shooter tier, available on PayPal as well, we've got Steve Seaborg of nameonanything.com and alltheworldsastage.net. At the turn it up to $11 tier, we have Alan Begg and patron upgrade, Frank Thielgard Mortensen, turning it up to 11 from, I think it was 5. So awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, Frank.
At the $10 tier, still no one has come to the team. I think it's just going to be vacant forever now. That's probably why Frank skipped right over it. He's just like, screw that. I don't want to be in the no one came tier all by myself. But we will rename it if you join the $10 tier. So the $5 money lender tier, we've got Clay Wambacher, Greg Sealby, Mike Knowles. And I just want to say Frank Thielgard Mortensen again, because I'm so used to it. At the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, Peter Gardot, Ian DeRosier, Mark Robach, and Anton Glaving. Sorry, Robach. I've reverted to Robach. The $1 made-up name tier, we have L's Murders, Spacey Noodles, The Chilling Leaky Mausoleum, and Michael Veda. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your support for this show. And, of course, the amazing people that do amazing work at the Deep Dive Podcast Network. Riot, Sabbath, Bloody Podcast, The Simple Man at Skinner Reconsidered, and Terry T-Bone Mathley of T-Bone's Prime Cuts, looking for a new home. Left his podcast behind. He's cooking up some new show. So looking forward to see T-Bone's Prime Cuts revived in a new platform. And then, of course, the one and only Jorg Planer, who supports this show in so many ways, mostly by answering my dumb questions. And does so with poise, elegance, professionalism, and a boatload of knowledge. So we thank Jorg for helping a couple of dummies like us who really don't know anything about Deep Purple to produce this show. All right. So this week we are hitting into, kind of a nice subject, but also very sad subject, celebrating the life and times of Jon Lord, one of our all-time favorite musicians. And I guess just to kick it off, what are your earliest memories of discovering Jon Lord, listening to him? What do you remember about Mr. Lord?
Jon Lord was one of the only musicians that was in a band where I thought keyboards were cool, because I hated before Deep Purple, I hated keyboards, because it was 80s keyboards.
Oh yeah.
Which, I've come to accept in music now when I listen to it retro. I've talked about before, like, if there's a time and a place for everything. Sometimes I don't mind the cheesy 80s keyboards or the 80s production or whatever, but at the time I was not about it. So Jon Lord happened to be in Deep Purple, happened to be an integral sound of it, and was like the first keyboard, organ, Hammond player to like make that instrument like cool, because the stuff he did with that, especially on the early stuff, because I think I started like Mark II before Mark I, but I started right around the classic era, because that's the one that magazines and everything that I was reading talked about. And the stuff that he was doing on, like, in rock, Machine Head, I'd never heard keyboard like that before. It was sometimes I was just like, good God, this is heavier than a guitar. So to me, he was just like, there was that, and then he just looked really cool. He was like this really mythical looking figure. I'd never like heard him talk before. or anything like that. He was just this guy with long hair, a big walrus mustache, sunglasses. He was just this mysterious persona who just rocked on the keyboard. And I'm like, who is this guy? And that just made him the coolest to me. So, yeah.
He kind of just looked like all of your friends' dads too, just the mustache, the glasses. I mean, my dad looked like John Lord at one point. Yeah, but my earliest memories of, I mean, obviously I was aware of him and his music and had heard him, but I think the thing that really sticks out in my mind is watching the Denmark show and getting to see him play really opened my eyes to a lot of things as far as what he was doing in the band. Because sometimes you're just listening to the music and you're hearing everything together. You're not really like zoning in or honing in on one specific thing. You're just hearing how the whole thing comes together. But I remember watching him play Child in Time at that concert and just watching his fingers go and then just being like, holy crap, like the things that he was doing just really blowing my mind. And I think it might have had more to do with the fact that I knew how to play guitar, and I guess I technically sort of know how to play keyboards, but I've never taken like a lesson for keys, so it's all just self-taught. So seeing what he was doing, not really having any idea what he was doing, whereas when I could watch Ritchie, even though of course I can't do that either, I know what he's doing sometimes.
Yeah.
And with keyboards, it's just like, I don't know what he's doing. And then you got somebody like Don Airey, where it's just like, he's got those, his hands all curled up, and you're like, what? I can't even see what he's doing. But yeah, John Lord had these like long, thin, delicate, like little fingers that were just like moved like so fluidly over the keyboard. And sometimes he would just, take his whole palm and just mash it across the keyboard. And I know, as unmusical as that looks, if I did it, it would not sound good at all. Somehow he could just mash his palm across all of the keys and it sounded awesome. And if I did it, it would sound terrible.
Yeah. I mean, that's, he was also like, I agree. The Denmark concert was probably the first time that I saw him live, and seeing him live was a whole different thing because, like you said, he would mash his hand on the keyboard, or he'd pull those levers out, or he'd like lean on it and it would almost tip over. It would be like,
is he meaning to do that, or is that going to fall over accidentally?
I mean, that's more than you could do with the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's as much as you can do with the keyboard, and pretty impressive if you think about it too, because there's and really one of the first guys I think that I saw anyway, that keyboards in the music that we listened to were kind of off to the side, or it was a special guest or a session musician. There was no really, at the time anyways, that I knew of, a keyboard player that was, or an organ player that was part of the group. It was always somebody that was, here are the 3 or 4 main guys, and then, this guy played keyboards, but he's not part of the band, really. It was almost like it wasn't a real instrument until I discovered John Lord. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we talked about that a bit with Claude, and I think we talked about it a bit with Airey as well, maybe, but it is just that dynamic, like you said perfectly. When we grew up, keyboards generally sounded pretty terrible, and I still can't really listen to those that era of keyboard with much. Like there's certain things like that Oberheim sound like is amazing, like Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a really powerful, distorted, crunchy, snarling kind of keyboard sound, and that's just a synthesizer, but a really, really cool one. They use the same synthesizer for Jump by Van Halen, so you did get some cool things, but a lot of it was that like Peter Cetera electric piano sound, and I mean, for lack of a better word, it just sounds kind of cheesy in retrospect.
Well, it wasn't a lead instrument the way that John Lord was a soloist on. Like a guitar player would take a solo, the keyboard player never took a solo. But then retroactively, I went back and was able to appreciate like what Don Airey did on Blizzard of Oz.
Oh yeah.
Or the other things that he was featured in, or what Claude did on the Dio albums. Even though it wasn't really as much as John Lord did in Deep Purple, it's like I was able to go back and actually appreciate those guys more than I did at first, because it just kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, okay, like this is like, I always thought keyboards ruined metal, as, oh, there's keyboards in it, it's wimpy, and that's like such a, the stupid, teenage way to think about it. But it's so I kind of owe John Lord that is that he was really the pioneer too, because I think if you go back to like the 60s, 70s, who else was at that level of playing? Like, I can't think of anybody else where I'm just like, wow, like this guy blows me away, or that song has the, because what other songs in it had the keyboard, like a keyboard solo, or like an organ solo, like Born to Be Wild or House of the Rising Sun. That stuff wasn't really on the same level. It didn't really revolutionary the way John Lord was on in rock, or even on the Mark I albums.
Yeah.
He did some pretty great stuff on there. I feel like a little more classical based, but I mean, it was still more, I think, than you've heard from anybody else at the time, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think Lord, his style and the style of Deep Purple, the way that they crafted that was just unlike anything else. I mean, you talk about the big three, Sabbath, Purple, and Zeppelin. Purple's the only one that really tried anything like that. Obviously, there were keyboards in Zeppelin and there were keyboards in Sabbath, but not anywhere near to the level or the same way. They didn't have a dedicated keyboard player really in either. So they just had, that's what gave Deep Purple such a distinctive sound, and that interplay between him and Blackmore, of course. So where did it start with Lord? This isn't going to be like a retrospective where we go through his entire life, but one of the earliest, I think it's worth mentioning. This is could be disputed, but it's worth mentioning one of his earliest possible works, which everyone in the entire world has heard, and we've talked about on the show. But let's take a listen to this track from, I believe it's 1964. Let's take a listen. This is an organ, but he does come in on the piano. So I can't sleep at night. Yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night. You really got me. You really got me. You really got me. See, don't ever set me free. I always wanna be by your side. Hear that piano? You got me so I can't sleep at night.
I mean, that could be anybody.
Yeah, I know. It's like, man, I could have done that. Listen to this guitar solo. So yeah, so some pretty basic stuff from John Lord there, but there he goes again. If only I'd been hanging around London at the time, they got to me first. I could have. It's the one thing John Lord's ever played that I could probably play exactly as well as
him. Now, why do you? Well, I'll ask you after the song's over.
2 minutes and 14 seconds. That's how you do it.
So now, why do you say disputed? Did he ever confirm or deny that he was part of that, or did he not remember? Or
so it's not known with 100% certainty, but they asked him in an interview from Martin Keyboard in January of 1989 about his session work in the early days, and he says from John Lord. There's been so many. I played with the Kinks several times. I even played the piano on You Really Got Me. I was paid £5 for it. The guitar solo was played by Jimmy Page, but the Kinks have denied it. So I've heard that the Kinks have denied it, that Jimmy Page played the guitar solo. I've heard that Jimmy Page denies that he played that guitar solo, but John Lord insists that Jimmy Page played it. And I don't know. No one ever has a bad word to say about John Lord about anything.
John Lord doesn't seem like the type of guy to go around and make wild accusations.
And also in 1989, he had pretty much proven himself. I mean, I think if you ask people, like random people on the street, more people are going to know Deep Purple than the Kinks, even though obviously the Kinks are a huge influence on a lot of people. But so basically, I think I'm going with John Lord. I don't think he has any reason to lie about it. He's always been nothing but a gentleman and spoken highly of by everyone who's ever worked with him. The only interesting part is that Jimmy Page seems to deny that he played that part.
And there's really no way to tell because, I mean, we listened to some of Ritchie's early work, and I mean, the session work that those guys did back then, there was no, even like Jimi Hendrix, like if you hear any of their early stuff on box sets or whatever, it's like you can't tell their distinctive style because they hadn't developed it yet. And plus they were doing that for money, you know, they were doing it
and
to
playing chords as quarter notes, ding, 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 ding. I mean, it could literally be anybody. You wouldn't be able to tell their style.
He was probably a musician trying to make some money. He's like, sure, what do you need? They weren't paying him to do anything revolutionary on that. So,
and as far as that goes, I'm just looking this up right now. It is 1964. Okay, I just want to make sure I was right. I didn't want to get nasty emails from people that says, how could you possibly not know? That was 1964.
Because we don't know everything.
But then again, the only other part of that is that they did, I'm sure, a lot of session works. Maybe he did stuff with the Kinks and he just like got confused about it and thought it was. It's very conceivable he could be wrong, but I'm going with John Lord if that's what he says is the truth.
I mean, there is stuff too where, I mean, think about some of the music that we've played 20 years ago. Eric has sent me stuff recently, like links to stuff that he uploaded, and I'm just like, who's that? And he's like, that's you, or that's like, I forgot about this. Oh, that's us. And that was like 20 years ago.
Yep.
So it's like, it's possible that, you know, people don't remember things, or, you know what I mean? It's like, as fans, we fixate on those facts and everything, but when you live it and it's just a gig or a job or whatever, after the millions that they've had, it's like, who even remembers? But I mean, if it's, if that's, I would say, yeah, it could have been John Lord.
I feel like John Lord would, if he wasn't 100% sure, he'd be like, I did a lot of session work that time. I did some work with the Kinks. I think I'm on the song. I can't be 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I played on that. I think he would hedge it if he was unsure. Anyway, after that, he gets into a band called the Artwoods with none other than Art Wood, brother of Art Wood of the Artwoods, brother of Ronnie Wood from the Rolling Stones. And the Artwoods, we've talked about them before when we're talking about in our very, very early episodes, talking about the lead up to the members joining Deep Purple. And here's a song called Walk on the Wild Side. And this song features some pretty good John Lord keyboard work. And we know for sure this is him. Here we go. It's not often you hear sleigh bells on a non-Christmas song.
That's true.
You got that great album cover with John Lord in the back there with his glasses on, no mustache.
Oh yeah, you can instantly tell it's John Lord. So weird, huh?
It's a really cool kind of sleepy song. I will skip ahead though because it does go into a little bit of like a time change and gets a little bit more rockin'. So I want to really focus on some of his organ playing. So here we go. Now he's playing what's probably a Hammond, but he doesn't have that distorted part of it yet, which, if I recall, he's running it through like a Leslie distortion when he's in Deep Purple. So I'll tell you, he's still rocking the regular Hammond pretty hard here.
Oh yeah.
Well, that gives you a little bit of taste of John Lord's early organ work. And then as we come out of the Artwoods, we were talking, you and I, about our favorite Deep Purple moments, or favorite Deep Purple solos, I should say.
Right.
John Lord. And so you picked a solo and I picked a solo to really highlight John Lord's time with Deep Purple. And do you want to introduce your solo and talk about it at all?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely Flight of the Rat off in Rock was the solo that blew me away when I first heard it. It was like so raw and wild and almost just like a crazy guitar solo. Like I couldn't believe how much it rocked. Like it's just, you hear it and there's no way to put it into words. It's just like, so that's the one that got me to be like, wow, what this guy can do like on the keyboard is unbelievable. So to this day, it's probably one of my favorite, because it's just like how we talk about when a guitar player lets loose or a singer lets loose. Like that was just a perfect combination of the whole band getting into that groove and him just riffing over it. Like I don't know if it was off the cuff or if he practiced it or whatever, but to me, it just sounds like total abandon, and still my favorite.
All right, let's take a listen. So we obviously, everyone knows this part of the song. We're gonna skip ahead to John's keyboard solo around the 240 mark. Let's listen to this. And I love how Ritchie kind of takes over, the way that it kind of fades in.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not love that?
Yeah, that's an incredible one.
Oh yeah. I mean, I didn't even know how he was making those. I'm like, how could you make those noises?
Oh yeah, it sounds like there's that one part where it sounds like a spaceship's like taking off, and another part where it sounds like almost like Space Invaders.
It's just like, was he mashing his hands on the keyboard? Was he like doing like, was he like that part with you were talking about where he was like, you know, the really staccato stuff, or was he like taking his hands and like smacking the keyboard like bongos? Like who the hell even knows? It was
and he's
just
got a few of those signature John Lord things where it's like maybe he hit a wrong note, but he does it like 3 more times and it makes it, and it sounds right.
yeah.
You
Yeah, there's
do it
like a
enough
little
times,
dissonance. Yeah.
it's awesome. It's like
Yeah, little dissonance in there, like incredible.
yeah, he's a classic example of he knows all of the musical rules so well that he can break them all at any time at will, and he knows how to make it somehow work. You know, if I could pick up a piano and play wrong notes all day as a solo over something, it would sound like absolute garbage. But he actually has the knowledge to play the wrong thing, but knowing what he's doing, either if it's accidental, he can recover from it, and if it's on purpose, he can make you understand why he did it.
Yeah, like I mean, I like to think that solo is an example of he maybe there was like I'm just guessing one take, and he got so caught up in the moment or really rocking out on it that he, like you said, he maybe like flubbed a note or something. And he's like instantly knew, like, I know how to save this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just part of his that solo is just part of his genius.
I mean, it certainly sounds improvised.
I'm not hating it.
No, not at all. Great pick.
What is yours?
My pick, and it kind of keeps with a theme, is Rat Bat Blue.
I knew it.
Both songs with the word rat in it.
That's actually one of my second picks. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's hard not to.
Runner up.
It always comes up whenever people are talking about their favorite John Lord solo. So I'm definitely not original for thinking of it, but it's one of my favorites. And here we go. So obviously the song starts off with a classic riff. The solo comes in around the 2-minute mark, so I'm going to bring us right over to it. So here we go. Now that one is just an absolute onslaught. Like it doesn't give you a second to even recover. It starts off with this really, I love how it starts off with the do-nu, binu, ba-boonu, binu. He hits all those little off note, like upbeat notes. And then obviously goes into that insanity that's, I don't know, part synth, part harpsichord, and then goes into like more of a traditional Hammond, screeching Hammond sort of solo, and then ends in this like kind of weird like upbeat sort of note and comes out of the solo back into the song. I love how there's all those different parts of it which sound like somewhat composed. Like obviously that super fast part's got to be composed.
Oh yeah.
But and then there's the lead up to it, and then the part after that that is like he knows what he's doing in those parts, but it's still improvised in the moment. And wow, every time I hear that, I my jaw hits the floor.
Yeah, I feel like between the two solos, Flight of the Rat was probably more improvised, and this one was work. It feels like it could have been those different parts. It has more parts to it were worked out, but then he probably improvised like throughout, but maybe worked it out a little bit ahead of time. Because like you said, there's no way that they couldn't have been, because it definitely has like a beginning, a middle, and then an end to it, which is why that's a really good choice.
I think like Flight of the Rat is like a going to like an improv night where you don't know what's going to be happening, and Rat Bat Blue is like an episode of like Curb Your Enthusiasm where it's like, okay, in this scene, Larry's going to get mad at this guy because of this reason, but they don't know. So they kind of know what's the outcome's going to be, but he doesn't know how he's going to get there. And both work really, really well. Either going in it completely blind, not knowing what you're doing, or having just a basic framework what you're going to work within.
But either way, I think we could agree that both of those John Lord solos are pretty much him pulling everything out of his bag of tricks and being like, there you go. What do you think of that, baby? Because those are really the solos that I like the best from people like that. And I don't want anybody to apply it to the way that there are like some, excuse me, really kind of show-offy guitar players that do the same thing. Like, I mean, I can't think of any right now, and I don't want to crap on any of them, but it's just like if there are certain like 80s guitar players or like really flashy guitar players where it's just like, oh no, put that bag of tricks away. That's boring. Yeah. But it's just like when a really composed musician who knows what he's doing pulls out his whole bag of tricks, it's just kind of like he also knows how to use them. He's not just trying to be flashy, but it's just, he probably thought like, oh, that old thing, that's not impressive. And the rest of us are just like, you know, like going crazy. So.
All right. So next up, we got a couple of picks from Whitesnake. And John, you're pulling the first pick from Whitesnake as one of your favorite John Lord moments.
Yeah. So after Deep Purple, we know that John Lord was in Whitesnake. Probably the second longest band he'd been in. Maybe.
Yeah, because from 78 to 84?
Pretty much, yeah. So he was in there maybe a couple of years less than Deep Purple, but he was on every album up until From Trouble up through Slide It In.
Yeah, it's true. So he was in Purple for 8 years and then Whitesnake for 6. Wow.
And the way that he was produced on those albums, because I listened through to a few of them just to get re-familiar, because I hadn't listened to the Whitesnake albums for a while, but it kind of got me reacquainted with it. Was he didn't have the same role, and I don't think he was produced the same, because he didn't have that same kind of abandon in his playing, and he didn't really get as many solos. He kind of I feel like he provided more like color and texture to the music. I mean, he definitely contributed to Whitesnake in their early sound, and it's definitely him, but like his stamp was on it, but not in the same way as Deep Purple. So there weren't too many moments where it was like, I guess, jaw-dropping moments like that. But
yeah, and it wasn't really like Deep Purple was a lot about the interplay between Blackmore and Lord, and
yeah,
at least in those days when they were both in Deep Purple. But yeah, Whitesnake was more of an ensemble.
Yeah, which I mean is fine. I mean that's the way that it worked. It wasn't as much of a showcase for Lord, but when he was able to get out front, most of the times it wasn't. The solos were really kind of short, and the way they were produced weren't as, I guess, as raw, I guess you could say. But I mean, they definitely lent again to the early Whitesnake style or whatever, and you know, you could still tell it was John Lord in there, which is great that we still have him on all those albums. But one where I really enjoy his solo, which definitely like brings the song to the next level, is from the Reddy and Willen album, She's a Woman, which has that kind of that same kind of thing, but it's more of a Stormbringer type feel.
Mm-hmm.
So. And plus, he starts out the song.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna skip ahead to a little bit before about the 150 mark here for the solo. And that's kind of sounding more composed, obviously.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's an example of a more composed solo, obviously, that he did. But I mean, I remember the first time I heard it, I'm just like, they could have put a guitar solo over that, anything. But it's like, who else was doing that? Like, there's nobody else could have done that but John Lord, and it was just such an unusual kind of choice for the song. Like, it had that kind of like almost like dissonant sound to it, with the sounded a lot like the Stormbringer, what he would use for the Stormbringer album.
Yeah, it's like it's got to be like probably
a,
some sort of Moog or something. It's got
yeah.
that.
But I mean, it was just like so well done, and so I like that one because it's really kind of different in a song like that. Because I mean, he had also done a lot of kind of honky tonk piano stuff, a lot of Hammond stuff, a lot of like intros, and a lot of stuff in the middle of the song, like I said, that provided a lot of texture to it. But every once in a blue moon, like, he got a moment like that, and that I thought was really unique, and always was my favorite part of the song. Like, I would listen to that song just to get to the solo, because I'm like, it rocks.
And it's cool because it's got more of like an 80s type sound to it, obviously. Although it's got to be some sort of Moog. I'm sure somebody's out there's once again yelling at us for not knowing.
But you can tell it's him.
We're just fans, folks. We don't have all the information. But yeah, it for some reason reminds me, and maybe it's because it's so recently that we did that episode. The song from Difficult to Cure, is it Can't Happen Here? No, not Can't. The one that's got the Don Airey solo that's almost silly sounding, like the patch that he's using.
Oh yeah, I can't remember.
I'm drawing a blank as to which song it was, but it's got like that sound to it where it's like almost like a carnival type feel to it.
Yeah.
But it's like a fun sound. It's not like that badass growling organ sound. It's more of a happy-go-lucky sort of patch that he's using.
Like John Lord could have used his distorted Hammond there. Like, he could have played that same solo, but he went with that effect and that sound, and it was just like, I thought it was fantastic.
Oh yeah. Yep. All right, I've got a selection from Whitesnake, and it's not from a song. It is from a live performance. It's Coverdale introducing John Lord doing a little keyboard solo, and this is March 19th, 1983 in, I apologize, Jorg and everyone else, Ludwigshafen? Ludwigshafen? That sounds... I feel good with that pronunciation.
It sounds like a place.
Our German fans may disagree. So yeah, here he is in Ludwigshafen, playing a awesome keyboard solo.
Place now where we're going to introduce to you, I reckon, a friend of yours, or two friends of yours. Please welcome, before I forget, my good friend, John Baldwin.
I like you said before I forget. Look how awesome he looks.
Oh, yeah.
Shadowy figure. Darkened stage, still wearing sunglasses. I love how he'd always work in some like really nice sounding piano into his solos. And there's always those jackasses in the crowd that have to clap along.
I was thinking the same thing.
Like, leave John Lord alone. He doesn't need a metronome, especially a poor metronome.
There he goes.
There's the ashtray in the foreground. He's wearing those Adidas sneakers that, those Nike sneakers that Marty McFly wore in Back to the Future.
Wow.
There he goes. Rocking the hell out of that thing.
Jesus.
Ends like a church hymn.
Oh.
And that, I think, is the when he goes like shh, and he points over like this with the guns. I think that's he's pointing over to Cozy for Cozy to do his drum solo.
Yeah.
I think when we did the Cozy episode, we saw the beginning part of him pointing like that, and then goes into the 1812 overture. But yeah, just a master. And you know, the always whenever I'm listening to him or Don Airey do one of those awesome solos like that, I always feel ashamed because I know that there's probably like 25 different like little musical references they're putting in there as like a little joke or a little like, oh, I'm going to put in like just a couple bars from this concerto or whatever. And I'm just not smart enough to get most of it. Except when
Yeah.
Don Airey is like, oh, he just did Mr. Crowley. I heard that.
I was going to say that. Yeah, that's the only part that I caught without really paying attention, but anything else would be.
Yeah, then
they
they occasionally will just like work in like like a little Gershwin or like some a Bach, or you can catch these little pieces that you sort of recognize but you can't really point out.
Right. That was phenomenal. Yeah, that was amazing. I'd never really seen a John Lord solo from Whitesnake.
Yeah, that one kind of popped up for me. So and I'm not as familiar with his time in Whitesnake, so it's great to see that he was still doing awesome solos like that. So two more little things before we go into the next segment, but I did want to highlight a couple of other things. One being his solo career. And by solo, I mean him doing music on his own and not necessarily his classical stuff. So I've got this performance. This is actually much later. It's from 2004. It's him performing Saraband with a band, which I think has always been one of my all-time favorite pieces of music that he ever put together. And it's one of the most simple pieces of music he's ever put together as well, but it gives me goosebumps whenever I hear it. And this one is from Behind the Notes live at Vulcan Hall Köln, or as we in the States call it, Cologne. Another German performance in our all German John Lord episode. This is from October 5th, 2004. Here we go. This to me is like his nod to Brubeck. I hesitate to talk too much over this because it's so great.
Yeah.
But I love how it builds, and I love how John Lord just sits there and plays a relatively simple part on the piano and just lets this composition that he wrote speak for itself. Where we just saw him pull out every trick in the book with Whitesnake. Here he's letting his writing do the talking.
Well, yeah, really, this shows him more as a composer.
And even those little synths there, that's not even John Lord, it's somebody else playing that. I believe it's Matthias Kraus. And the guitar player is great, Paul Shigahara. So much dynamics going on in the song. It just has that like very, very soft opening and just comes into a crescendo here. And you were talking earlier too about those shred meisters from the 80s that we grew up in, and not wanting to shit on any of them, like you said, but
yeah,
it just goes to show when you, like we talked about with Lord, when you've got when you know all of the rules, and then you reach a point where you can start breaking the rules, and then you reach a point where you can just start saying, you know what, I don't need to in every performance show give everything I've got. I don't need to play behind my back and with my teeth and every other thing. I can just do something like this that's so dynamically interesting and fun to listen to. Anyway, I think I'll probably stop it there. We're about halfway through.
And I think one of the things with him too is that when you see him pulling out every trick in the book, when you see him being really impressive, you can tell it's coming from a place where he's passionate about it, where it's coming from his gut, not trying to be show-offy, which is why you can see him in a performance like this being more laid back and just being like, I'm going to let all the other musicians shine in this composition that I wrote. But I feel like something like that, when you're a good songwriter, arranger, whatever, that's as much of you get as much satisfaction out of that, of like sitting back and letting everybody else shine, because you're getting that satisfaction from, I built this up and I wrote it. And you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be him doing all the stuff, doing all the playing and all the dynamics and everything like that. Like, it could be just as satisfying for him to hear those other guys playing the guitar and the drums, and the other guy doing the keyboard solo, and not him. And that's what I think makes somebody really great, knowing when you said to kind of take that step back.
And to me, that is just him. And I don't know if it was intentional. It might have been. But to me, it just sounds like him channeling Dave Brubeck and wanting to kind of go. That to me just sounds like something that Brubeck would have done, and in the way that it's so simple yet so perfect, the way that it's orchestrated. And then we've got one last one as we go. That's kind of his band sort of thing. He also did that thing with the Hoochie Coochie Men, which I actually ended up listening to with my father-in-law last night, which is really good. It's great blues stuff with a lot of him and his buddies, and it's awesome. But there's also his classical stuff, and here it's from his 1998 album, Pictured Within. This is The Mountain Sunset. This shows off, talking about his composition, more of his classical sort of arrangement. And we'll just listen to a little bit of this. To me, this is just a very emotional song. Although in the classical world, I don't know if even call them songs. I remember our friend Paul's father is a big classical music guy yelling at me about that. They're not songs. A song is a very specific kind of. I was like, I'm not smart enough to understand that. He wasn't.
That
really
sounds like
yelling.
it could be like in a movie soundtrack or something.
Yeah, that's what I want. I wanted to say the same thing, but I was like, does that sound too? I don't know, too simple. Like, I mean, I guess I'm not. I've never understood classical well enough to. There's a lot of classical music that I really, really love, but I just don't know that I understand it well enough to. To me, the highest praise I could give is it sounds like it should be on a movie soundtrack, but I don't know if that's the highest praise a classical composer could get. They might be annoyed.
Probably. Because they're just like, yeah, it's dummies like you that say that, and you don't even know what you're talking about. But, I mean, we all know John Lord from starting from Concerto, having that classical background, and everything that he did in early Deep Purple, Mark I, was very classical sounding. To me, I always respected him for that, because that's one of those, like, to me, like a top tier of music. Like, you have to be a really good, schooled, knowledgeable musician to play that well and understand
and to
it.
write it out. I remember writing out some arrangements before for things, and there was a music teacher I had in college who helped me with some of it once, and I was just like, oh, it's just as simple as whatever. And he was, telling me, because different instruments use different clefs and different, the way I don't even understand how to explain it, because I don't understand it at all, but trying to write for all, for woodwinds and brass and strings and all this, I don't know how to, there's treble clef and bass clef and viola clef, and I understand treble and bass, but beyond that, it gets a little confusing. But it's really, really interesting stuff. And his classical stuff I have listened to a little of, and I really need to dive a little bit more into, because it's incredible. That was from 1998, so he would have been in Deep Purple for 4 more years before he left to really spend his final 10 years doing a lot of classical stuff, and of course the Hoochie Coochie Men, like we talked about. So then we get into his, a little on a sadder note, his final public performance, July 8th, 2011. It was at the Sunflower Jam, and he and Rick Wakeman had gotten together and written a song to perform special for that, and we had actually showed this on a previous episode. We showed parts of this. So they start off telling a lewd joke about their penises, and then they go right into the music. So I'm glad that they still had, these old friends telling a dirty joke, and then, or I should say a suggestive joke. And here we go. I'm going to cut right to the music here.
Thank you very much.
Is everyone laughing at their joke? So this is just Rick Wakeman and John Lord showing off. It's not as big as it was, is the name, so you can figure out what the joke was. 70 years old
Jeez.
performing this. Rick Wigman is taking over. But I'll put a link to this in the show notes. This is, or we can skip to the very end here because I think it'd probably be good to see his full end of his final performance here. I like all the rock guys just there, like they just went to central casting and got some rock guys. So there you go. That was his final performance.
Now, did he know that was going to be his final? Like, was that his last appearance he planned on making, or do we know that?
I don't think anyone knew because I know he. So basically, he had at this point probably knew that he had pancreatic cancer, and but he ended up dying suddenly from something else. I think it was I think he had a pulmonary embolism or something that. So it kind of, even though people knew he was maybe not doing so well, it did kind of come as a surprise to everyone. So it would have been pretty much a year and a week later that he would have passed away. So very, very sad stuff for sure.
And, you close your eyes and you hear him playing and it doesn't sound any different than 10, 20, 30 years earlier.
No.
Still had it.
Still had it for sure. Okay. So, after that, obviously, sadly, John Lord passed away. There was a statement on his website about his passing on johnlord.org. And it said, "It is with deep sadness we announce the passing of John Lord, who suffered a fatal pulmonary embolism today, Monday, 16th of July, at the London Clinic after a long battle with pancreatic cancer. John was surrounded by his loving family." John Lord, the legendary keyboard player with Deep Purple, co-wrote many of the band's legendary songs, including Smoke on the Water, and played with many bands and musicians throughout his career. Best known for his orchestral work, Concerto for Group and Orchestra, first performed at the Royal Albert Hall with Deep Purple and the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra in 1969, and conducted by the renowned Malcolm Arnold. A feat repeated in 1999 when it was again performed at the Royal Albert Hall by the London Symphony Orchestra in Deep Purple. John's solo work was universally acclaimed when he eventually retired from Deep Purple in 2002. John passes from darkness to light. John Lord, 9th of June, 1941 to 16th of July, 2012. So I remember that day very well because I remember we talked on that day, and my my twin sons had came home from the hospital. It must have been the next day.
Really?
And I remember sitting at the computer. They were, less than 5 pounds each. So just holding both of them and playing them. They're probably the first music they ever heard was John Lord, just going through my playlist and just pulling some random things and listening to it. Not like I was like trying to educate them or anything at 9 days old or however old they were. They were in the NICU for about a week and a half. So they had just come home, and I had heard this news like a day or two before. And like I said, we talked, and then played them this. I played some of the concerto and some of the other stuff, and I always remember that, hearing about it. And it was kind of like the Dio thing, where you knew he was sick, you had heard about it, and then it goes under the radar. You don't hear anything for a little bit, you almost forget about it, and then you get hit like a ton of bricks when you hear it. You think, oh, he's doing better, and oh, I heard he's doing well, and then you get this terrible news, and it's always sad to hear.
Yeah.
The official. I'm sorry.
I don't remember talking to you, to be honest.
I remember because I had actually we spoke about it, and we started talking, and then you had mentioned the 99 concerto, which for some reason I think I might have just missed, or wasn't, or hadn't, or just somehow it gotten by me. So then I immediately got that and listened to it, and I remember listening to that and hearing that they were doing the Butterfly Ball songs and thinking, oh my God, this is incredible.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I always have that memory, and it's probably more ingrained in me because it happens right when my sons were born, and I have such a strong memory of that.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've mentioned before, your memory is a little more faulty.
Yeah. I mean, I do remember being affected by it. Like, I knew, like you said, that he was sick, and like not really having an avenue, as I guess, like a really sudden flow of info like we do now. Even though in like 2012 there was Facebook and internet and everything, but maybe not as much as it is now. But then all of a sudden just hearing about it and just being like, whoa, just like any other kind of big musician, somebody that's had an influence on me had passed away. I just remember it being like a really big deal. And I mean, I knew that I had talked to any big Deep Purple thing happened, I would talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we hadn't spoken for a while.
That's about the only time we talked. every 6 months or a year, it'd be like, hey, did you hear what see about this?
Yeah, until a little over a year ago. Now it's like every week.
Yeah. Now it's too much. So the band had an official statement. Our beloved John passed away this day, Monday, the 16th of July, 2012. We have lost a dear friend, a brother, and a wonderful musician. His dignity and graciousness touched us all. His music was an inspiration and took us places beyond our imagination. A truly great man. We humbly express our eternal love and great respect. Deep Purple, Uncommon Man. So it's interesting that they put that Uncommon Man at the end. Roger Glover had this to say on his website, which he used to update a lot more frequently, and I've been following this website forever, and I love when he writes. I love the way that he writes, and he'll occasionally just write these things on his website. He's been doing it a little bit more now, more recently, because he's stuck at home and just kind of going through some of his old music stuff or whatever. But he said, Roger Glover says, "It's unthinkable that John is gone. My thoughts are for his wife Vicky and all his children and family at this sad moment in their lives. I wish them all strength. A great sadness and sense of loss hangs over me. Not only has the music world lost a fantastic musician, but a gentleman of the finest order. He was a giant in my life, a great friend, a fellow traveler, a teacher, not only of music, but of life. I am devastated at his passing." Roger Glover, July 17th, 2012. The day, I believe it was the day that he passed away, or it might have been the following day. Gillan was on God, I forget. I'm sorry. I forget the exact thing that he was on. Let's see if I can pull it up right here. Planet Rock. I'm sorry. And he gave kind of like an off the cuff interview, only a couple of minutes, and he said, we've lost a brother, really, a dear friend and someone we all looked up to. John was our hero. He tells a story of about a fan that went up to John Lord at the airport, and he had the fan saw John Lord at the airport and got all flustered and didn't know what to say. So he said, "John, I'm your hero," meaning to say, "John, you're my hero." And so John said, "Oh, you're King Arthur?" Which is a great story.
Oh, that's great.
Gillan called him the godfather of Deep Purple, and he says, "I don't think we'll ever be separated from John because he's touched us all, and we shall carry his memory forward, and his music, of course." Then we've got from David Coverdale, we've got a great eulogy that he wrote. So I'm going to put that up here.
Good evening. I'm David Coverdale. I will share with you, as I shared with my immediate family, a few personal memories of my initial introduction to John Lord that involved his incredible warmth, patience, and generosity that immediately came to my mind, and for which I will be eternally grateful. My first encounter with John was as an opening act for the early Mark II at Sheffield University. John came up to me after our show and was very complimentary about my singing and discreetly asked for my phone number, whispering, "In case it doesn't work out with a new guy." Of course, in those days, I was living at home with my parents, and we never had a phone, so I hastily gave him my address, shook hands, and went out to watch some of their show before we drove back to Teesside. I remember it vividly. Of course, it worked out beautifully and successfully with the new guy, as we all know, but it didn't stop me rushing down to the front door every morning for months to see if he'd written to me. As you can imagine, it was an indescribable boost for my morale at that time in my life. A sweet, sweet man. He knew how to elevate your spirit. He had poetry and rhetoric in abundance, and a great, great guy to have a long, expensive dinner with. Unless it was back in the day when we didn't really eat that much after overindulging in Peruvian naughtiness. We left a host of disappointed and confused chefs in our wake, but some of you know all about that. The second time was at my actual audition for Deep Purple in London in 1973. I was pretty nervous, of course, but determined. I discreetly brought a bottle of Bell's whiskey that my friend Roger Barker, who'd driven me to London, had hidden from me, and which, of course, I immediately found and gave me cause to go for frequent little shots. But no one was more engaging, welcoming, and calming to me than John Lord. He spoke to me so very kindly and encouraged me to the point where I must credit him for helping me relax and give a solid account of myself at the audition. God bless his cotton socks. And the last example of John's amazing character was at Clearwell Castle in Gloucestershire, where we had gone to work on songs for what became the Burn album. John was going to be late as he had business in London, so Ritchie, Glenn, and Ian Paice started jamming immediately in the castle crypt. Amazing music, amazing musicians. I wandered in and out, sipping on cognac or scotch and coke, not knowing what the hell to do, as this was also new and unknown to me. I found out later that John had called Ritchie to see how things were going and how I was fitting in. Ritchie said everything was fine, but I hadn't sang anything. I hadn't sang anything yet. So when John eventually arrived, he and I had several sniffed of some fine alcoholic beverage and walked down to the rehearsal room. And with him at his Hammond and me at the microphone, I sang non-stop for God knows how long. Beatles songs, jazz songs, blues riffs. Slowly but surely, the guys all came in and started playing along, and suddenly I was a member of the best band in the world. I had the incredible honor of being in two extraordinary bands with John, Purple, of course, and Whitesnake, but that's a whole other story. I have no doubt that with the healing passage of time that something wonderful will take place somewhere where his former colleagues and I can come together and all celebrate his extraordinary life and his many musical gifts and share it with John's multitude of fans. So in closing, I thank you, John, with all my heart. I will never forget you and what you brought to me and countless others' lives. The many precious memories I will treasure forevermore. Bon vivant, raconteur, premier musician, and gentleman extraordinaire, John Douglas Lord, I salute you.
A pretty touching little eulogy from Mr. Coverdale. Delivering it, of
He's
course.
got away with words, yeah.
Yeah. Great thing. I'll put a
Wow.
link to that in the show notes. It's on I think it's on the White Snake page. I thought it was worth playing a few minutes of this as well, which is I checked with Jorg, so you can know that this is 100% accurate. But this is the last time that John Lord would have performed with David Coverdale, and it was it's always in Germany.
Oh my goodness.
They never give me a break. It's always in Germany. This would be okay. Mandigsborgen? Let me know how I did. Where is it? Why can I not find it? Mandigsborgen? It's got to be Mandigsborgen. Or maybe I could just put a link in the show notes since I'm having trouble finding it. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. So this is Whitesnake Live, Mandisborgen. This is 1984, and this would have been just a couple of weeks before he finally, before he reunited with Deep Purple. So I think at this point, Coverdale probably knew this was the end, at least with John Lord being in the band. But anyway, here they are, Mandisborgen. Nailed it. This is a TV show.
Good evening, Las Vegas.
John Lord in his like mobster tracksuit.
Yeah, I'm John Lord. How you doing? Gambler. What a great song.
And this whole performance, this whole set list is only about a little over 16 minutes. You can check it out on YouTube.
Stand on the outside, looking at love. I wanna get inside. Stand on the outside, looking at love. Just trying to get inside. Now play my fortune, and lock in the door. Dance to the queen of hearts. The jack of all trades, loser in love. Staring the soda card. Come on, babe. Stand on the outside, looking at love.
And they were good live, man.
Oh, yeah.
Stand on the outside.
And look at all those legends up there. John Lord, Cozy Powell. Right, that's Adrian Vandenberg,
Is it Vandenberg?
I think. That sure sounds like Mickey Moody.
It's kind of dark. It's hard to.
I think it was, because this was the Slide It In album, and this must have been when he retooled the band.
Get that clip of that little shot of John Lord to end it off, but thought it was interesting to see the last time that Coverdale would have played with Lord. It's amazing that it was that long ago.
Yeah. It wasn't even like it was in the 2000s.
Nope.
Not even the 90s. Jeez.
So then we move on to another Mark III/4 friend, Glenn Hughes. I guess Glenn Hughes was in flight when John Lord passed away, and he landed in LA from London. It's a long flight. And he said, he posted, friends, I have just landed in LA from London to hear the sad news of the passing of our brother, John Lord. I will miss him. Prayers, please. I will sing and play a tribute track for John Lord with friends Chad Smith and Steve Vai in the studio tomorrow. And as far as I can tell, that's when they got together and recorded Highway Star for the Remachined album, which would have come out in September of that year. So it's the best I can tell. He doesn't mention what it is. Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm often wrong. And that, so something I have alluded to many times in the past is Glenn celebrating him at the John Lord concert, which unfortunately Coverdale was not at. But before that, we just played the last time that Coverdale performed with, that Lord performed with Coverdale. So now I'm going to play for you the last time that Hughes performed with Coverdale, which is much more recent. And this is from 2009, performing You Keep On Moving live.
Oh.
And I wasn't sure. I'd seen this clip quite a few times, and I tweeted at Glenn and said, hey, is just curious, would this have been the last time that you ever performed with John Lord? And he confirmed that it was. So very, very sad to hear that. But here is Glenn Hughes and John Lord performing for the last time together. That little smile he gives to John Lord. You can tell he's loving it.
Not a big fan of like faux hawk Glenn Hughes.
Not his best.
Just saying. Just saying.
You know what? If I could sing like that, I would do any hairstyle you would want to give me. I'm talking to you, London town. There you go. Guess we know where they are. I'm gonna skip ahead a little to Lord when they kick in. Killing it on the bass on this song.
Oh yeah. And look at even later in life, look at how friggin' cool he is. The elder statesman of rock.
I know, he's got the gray hair, the ponytail, the sunglasses, the black suit. That was just his trademark at this period.
Oh yeah.
I'll jump ahead a little bit here. So obviously a little bit more recent than the Coverdale performance. Look at the big smile on Glenn Hughes' face. That's so awesome. He just puts his the finger gun up and he's like, bow, and he just calls it. He's like, yeah, I'm just playing this one song from you with you guys, but I'm John Lord and I'm in charge, just so you guys know. If you think you're calling the shots as when the song ends, you're wrong.
Nope.
And then of course, like I said, I've mentioned this a million times, but Glenn Hughes at the John Lord celebration, which is something we have to cover entirely in a different episode. He plays what we all know is my favorite Deep Purple song, This Time Around, and does it live to honor John Lord. And I've spoken about it before, and I do need to preface it because Glenn starts off with the most insane vocal acrobatics you've ever heard. And when I first heard it, I just remember my take being like, what is he doing? It's crazy. It's too much. But when you watch the entire performance until the end, you see that he's just kind of, it's like when we saw him honor Ronnie Dio with the Catch the Rainbow, and you're just like, oh my God, he just brings the house down. It's the same sort of situation here where he's like, I know a lot of people say a lot of crap about Glenn Hughes and his vocals and things, but I really feel like it just comes from a place of just pure love. He's just putting his heart out there to everybody about how much he misses his friend and mentor and all that sort of stuff. So prefacing it with that, let me kick into celebrating John Lord with This Time Around with Glenn Hughes. How far he is from the mic to have that kind of power.
Look how many people are there.
Looks like you can hear a pin drop in that audience.
All around us hangs and dies. We face a crime that we'll hear about. To pay the cost will never be the same. Oh no, eternal lovers were not to blame. There's no mistakes, there's no refrain. The same surroundings that stood are here again. This time, as I look around, you can't be found. To lose you, I would rather see the endless time and space go passing by. This time around, oh, this time around. So look around, we all will be found. Love to those who are not to blame. There's no mistakes, there's no refrain. Sips around names, he stood here again. This time, as I look around, you can't be found. To lose you, I would rather see the endless time of space go passing by. This time, this time, to lose you, I would rather see the endless time of space go passing by. Ah, oh yeah. To lose you, I would rather see the endless time of space go passing by.
I honestly just get chills when I see that every time.
My God, that's like one of the best performances that I've ever seen. Think of that, right? 36 years after they recorded that, and he still sung it like nobody's business.
He sounds better than he not that he sounded, I mean, you know how I feel about Glenn Hughes. His voice has only gotten better. It's just uncanny because we're always talking about, oh, the singer, they need to down tune a little bit and he can't hit the notes on this song. Nobody says that with Glenn Hughes. He's every bit as good, if not better, now at almost 70 as he was at 25.
And I mean, what a great tribute too to John Lord with the song that they kind of a great composition they did together.
Mm-hmm.
They were in the band. I was thinking that would be funny if like he walked back out with the bass and they just went into like Ode to G.
Oh, I know, that'd be awesome.
It was just this tender moment. They're like, they start rocking out and everybody's like, all right, too much.
It's too much. Yeah. But yeah,
but yeah, that was fantastic.
It's such a good performance. And it's funny. I was just thinking when I was just making that joke, but you know, people, oh, Gillan can't sing this like he used to. He can't sing Child in Time anymore. And people are like, oh, Coverdale can't sing this and that. And then people are like, oh, Glenn Hughes sings too many high notes and everything. Nobody's ever happy. It's like they're either upset that they can't hit the notes that they used to be before, or they're upset at Glenn Hughes because he hits too many high notes. Oh, people just need to enjoy and accept and enjoy all this great music and not be so negative about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, sure. Is Glenn a little extra?
Oh,
absolutely.
But that's, you know what you're signing up for. And don't get me wrong, I can, if it's not your thing, I totally get it. I'm not offended. I've always loved him. I think he has an unbelievable voice. He's one of my musical heroes. But I get it if it's not for you. I totally do. But you know, but when you sign up for Glenn Hughes, you're not signing up for somebody to come in and understatedly sing something. And but once again, when it comes down to it, when it came to that Dio tribute, when it comes to this John Lord tribute, the guy delivers. He comes in and he brings the house down every time. Just comes in, sings one song, leaves, and everyone's jaws are on the floor.
Well, you know what it is? I think you were kind of saying it before, is like that's his emotion for his recently passed friend. That's the way that he expresses his emotion is through his vocals. So like all of like, you know, you think like, oh wow, that's craziness and everything. Like that's him like basically like pouring his heart out through his vocals. Like you hear his, like that's his emotion. You're like physically hearing it. Whereas like some people you can see it on their face or through what they don't say or, you know, anything like that. And I think that that's, you know, a great a great gift that he has. And, you know, it's just wonderful to hear. And I think on this song, it's like, he actually was, I don't know, just this perfect kind of balance between like not going too far and just like just singing a great song, and then the end of it, just you could feel like, you know, when he said, "Do you say I miss you?" or
I love
you
you at the end when he says I love you. The first time I ever saw that, I was like, it killed me. I was like, oh my God, because it's just, you know, it's such a simple thing and it could be cheesy in so many ways, but he's just like, he's putting it out there exactly how he feels. Like it's like his friend, his brother, his bandmate has passed away, and he's like, it's unbelievable.
And you know what? Good for him, and good for Coverdale with the tribute that he read, and everybody else that, because some people don't have the guts to sing or to speak or say that kind of emotion. They keep it all bottled up, or they're just like, I'm a tough guy, I'm not gonna say these things. So it's just like that's great to see people able to open up like that and you know, show their emotions and their love for other people. I think that's really cool. And that's what art is all about. That's what music is all about. And that's why we love this, you know, band and everybody associated with so much, I think.
So Ritchie Blackmore had this to say. It came out on his official channel. Former Deep Purple guitar legend Ritchie Blackmore has issued the following statement. John was not only a great musician, he was my favorite dinner companion. We are all deeply saddened. We knew he was sick, but the word was that he was recovering and doing much better. This news came as a complete shock. Without John, there would be no Deep Purple. He lives on in our hearts and our memories. And then Ritchie Blackmore wrote a song, which he performs, I believe, at every show, called Carry On, John. And it's an instrumental. And I think it's perfect that he did it. And it's always been it's on a Blackmore's Night album, and he plays it at all the Blackmore's Night shows. And it's an absolutely beautiful melody and great instrumental. And I've always really, really loved it. And it's great because it's just Ritchie Blackmore. He's not going to, you know, write lyrics or have anyone else write lyrics. He's going to say it through his guitar and through his the style that he plays. There's a few different versions I've heard. On the album, he does it with an electric, and something about the tone he has and stuff. I don't think it speaks to it the same way it does when he plays it live. When he plays it live, he plays a slideshow of John behind him and some photos. There's a couple of acoustic versions I found live that are really, really good, but I'm going to play this one, which is the most recent one I think I can find. It's from June 12th of 2019.
Oh, wow.
And it's very recent. So like I said, he always plays it. And this is him playing it once again in Germany, in Munich. I know how to pronounce that. In Munich, playing it. And this time he plays it with an electric, and then they go into burn after he plays it. So this is Ritchie Blackmore with Blackmore's Night, playing this time electric, Carry On, John. look that Ritchie's giving John. To me, it was always really just touching that Ritchie is not the guy who is going to show up at the Royal Albert Hall and join the festivities join the group, and the fact that he would do anything like this at all, and the fact that he does it constantly, really speaks to the friendship and the music relationship that the two of them had. That he would.
You see, and then like what I was saying before with Glenn Hughes' performance and what Coverdale said about him, those guys were like wearing their heart on their sleeve, where Ritchie, you wouldn't picture him being that open and openly emotional about it, but through this song, you see that side of him that you rarely hear about.
And it's
like this whole pictorial.
And you can just see it, like Ritchie he puts up this slideshow of pictures of him and Ritchie, and he plays this beautiful melody, which I think is a beautiful song, and doesn't say a word more about it. Just like, this is it. This is my tribute to my good friend that I love, and I'm not really gonna get much more into it than that because I'm Ritchie.
Yeah, he says it in his own quiet way.
But yeah, you can look up "Carry On, John." There's like a million different versions on YouTube. I think that one might be one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was really nice.
So Steve Morse had some written statement to say, and then he also posted a video. This is Steve Morse's words on John Lord.
Was 24 hours before our first show. We had a rehearsal inside the venue in the dressing room. And I remember plugging up and just kind of playing a riff, and all of a sudden I heard it come back through the organ. John, his ears were so perfect, he could hear it and played it back. And then when we all started jamming, everybody joined in. I played something else. He heard it, and then he changed it and made a harmony to it. And this went on for about 15 minutes of just jamming and smiling. Everybody was enjoying the fact that we had this chemistry. And in the studio, our first album, Perpendicular, part of the magic of that was having John there saying things like, well, this is unusual, this part here, but I don't think we should throw this idea out because it doesn't sound like a rock thing. What if we change it this way and incorporate it into the song? Or let's do this simple thing with more of a modulation. He was always combining the classical and the rock together in his mind. When he wrote the concerto and we performed that in Albert Hall, it was the biggest production I've ever seen. There was 80-something musicians of London Symphony Orchestra. Here we are in Albert Hall, and to hear John's work and be part of it was absolutely incredible. And I was very honored to be asked to play on the third movement of the recording right before he died. So, on top of that, John was such a warm, friendly person and such a gentleman to everybody. Everyone who says anything about John will remember that he's the English gentleman. I remember one of the few times I was able to take my young son on the road. John spent some time talking to him in a Donald Duck voice, and amusing him. And it was so amazing to be, just to see the patience he had and just the big heart he just, that's why people get so upset about John being gone. He was larger than life, you know, just, he could do so many things so well, and we miss him.
And when we spoke to Ray Fenwick and when we spoke to Don Airey, they both said that too. The gentleman, everybody that you talk to about him says he was a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely no mistake. You don't, again, anybody else that you can think of any of these people, you know, even when we did our Dio special, there were plenty of people that said some nasty things about Dio, or Dio had some, you know, might have had a mean streak or whatever, but you don't hear that anybody say a single bad word about John Lord ever. Speaking of Don Airey and Ray Fenwick, Don, when we did our interview, he told that great story, right, about the last performance that John Lord had with Deep Purple.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a video of it, of what Don Airey explained happened. So here's Don Airey's starting a keyboard solo. I recognize that one. So I'm going to skip ahead, as great as his solo is, but to show the part where Don's solo is going to end, and then the lights come down, and then when the lights come on, John Lord is there to replace him. And Don explained this in our interview about how amazing it was, and how the fans went crazy. Now you can kind of see for yourself how that happened.
Well, there's that one guy that really loved it.
The lights go down.
Wow.
Not gonna play the whole song, but can you just imagine being there and not knowing that John Lord was just gonna rise up out of the floor and start playing?
Wow.
Pretty incredible stuff.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Even like when Don told the story, just seeing what he described, I was ready for it, but I wasn't ready for it. Like when the lights came on, I was like, oh my God, it's John Lord.
no matter how many times you see that, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
Well, because you know what? I put myself in the shoes of everybody being there. Like, how cool is that? Like you get to see Don Airey perform with Deep Purple, and then just unexpectedly, John freaking Lord shows up and is playing one of their biggest hits from their comeback album. And you're like, oh my God, it's basically the original band back together again.
So one more quick
cool
thing
thing
I wanted to show. This Don mentioned in our interview too was this Wind in the Willows Eddie Hardin project that he worked on with John Lord. So here's a little. It's a strange thing. So we start off, there's this kind of guy sitting in a chair reading a story, and then you go into these great instrumentals. You've got Peter York there, Ray Fenwick, Eddie Hardin, and then of course Don Airey and John Lord working together, and this is 1985, I think. So it was a while ago. And I'm gonna skip ahead to the point where basically Don Airey is wrapping up a little solo he has, and that goes right into Don Lord. So here we go. Full Miami Vice John Lord there.
I was just gonna say, that's Miami Vice John Lord. Oh my God.
I love that John Lord, they just stuck him like behind a fern somewhere. There's a big fern.
which is another 80s thing too. Just they seemed like there were ferns all over the place.
It's like, this is like live from the Golden Girls living room. John Lord sitting in a big wicker chair.
Out on the lanai. Well, he's obviously dressed up for his date with Blanche later.
This is an amazing, amazing concert to watch. All these musicians, just incredible. Graham Bonnet sings a bunch of the songs, and it's a lot of fun to watch. Great album and a great one-off concert. But it's interesting that he and Don would have performed this together, and then really never crossed paths again until many, many years later when we kind of have that little crossover with Beaver. And it's great. You could just feel the real friendship between like Lord and York and Eddie Hardin, and just they would just anything. Or Tony Ashton's on this too, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's on it as well. And just Tony Ashton comes out in typical Tony Ashton format, steals the show. It's like anything one of those guys was doing, they just call up hey, John Lord, I'm going to be playing the Royal Albert Hall next week. Could you come and play, could you learn 17 new songs and come play with me and Don Airey? Oh, sure.
Sure, what time?
I was going to be in California, but I'm sure I could fly back for that, no problem.
You know, the thing that strikes me about this too is John Lord is timeless. Sure, we made fun of his Miami's Vice outfit, but it's if you close your eyes or you listen to just the audio of this, it could have easily been in 1969.
Yep. Incredible stuff. But that's Don Airey and Don Airey has most of the solos in this thing, but John Lord does get a chance to kind of duel with him a little bit. It's great. Mm-hmm. Definitely worth checking out. I'll of course have the links to all the stuff in the show notes. And then kind of wrapping it up, we've got Bernie Marsden bringing up. I'll put this in the show notes, but he gives a long story about how he met John Lord. Mm-hmm. And he says, talks about their kind of one of their first meetings and sends his love to John and his family. And I wanted to play what maybe one of the later times that, I don't know for sure, but it might be the last time that Bernie Marsden ever performed with John Lord. And they do Here I Go Again. And it's a really interesting kind of live version that the two of them do. My favorite part about this, I'll start it up.
It's been very good to me, and we played it the other day, just the two of us at John's house, and that's how we're going to do it tonight. So hope you like it. I think you'll know it when we do it. John's going to introduce it for you.
So Bernie's walking off to go find his guitar and put his guitar on and tune it, and John Lord's just playing on the keys, and he looks over his shoulder every so often to be like, is he ready yet? Is he ready yet? He's just basically stalling until Bernie's ready to play, and it's great. I could just listen to him play all day.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that audience was pissed. It's, we got to listen to John Lord improvise for a while. Oh, damn it.
For a minute and a half. Boo!
Oh. Yeah, I would have been furious. Not.
Did you just say not? Not.
Ugh. Well, I guess the Miami Vice thing just transported me back.
Yeah, you're back. So see, he keeps looking over at Bernie. Is he ready yet? Bernie's tuning up.
You tune up that damn thing yet, guy?
Listen to this.
Yeah, because John Lord played the original intro to this. The original Whitesnake version. Look at this. What is this, like a bar?
Beat me to it.
The crowd's just going, even though he's not trying to start up yet.
Here we go. I don't know where I'm going, but I sure know where I've been.
Oh, he sings this really well.
I'm hanging on to promises and songs of yesterday, and I made up my mind. I ain't wasting no more time. And though I keep searching for an answer, I never seem to find what I'm looking for. Lord, I pray you give me strength to carry on, 'cause I know how it feels to walk along the lonely street of dreams. Come on. Here I go again on my
Is it gonna be hobo or drifter?
going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone.
What a relief.
Oh, if he said hobo, it would have stuck out like a sore thumb.
Well, you figure, but he's the original guy, right?
Yeah.
But he's like,
I write the lyrics, though.
He's like, I know where those checks are coming from. It's from Drifter, not Hobo.
Here I go again.
It's a really great version of this.
Here I go again.
I was just talking about how Lord is timeless, and he's like playing on a Casio keyboard over here or something. Not that it sounds bad. It sounds great.
Yeah, it's like that electric piano sort of patch, but it sounds great.
Well, I mean, it's John Lord playing it.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I mean, you could play on a broken piano, it would sound great.
You give me strength to carry on, 'cause I know how it feels to walk along the lonely street of dreams.
I love how he sings it different than Coverdale, but it's got such a great character to it. You see John Lord singing along there.
Yeah.
Going down the only road I've ever known.
Well, I mean, he must know his vocal limitations, too, and he'd, like, adjust the song perfectly.
To walk alone. I made up my mind.
He's almost got more of like a country sound to his voice.
I ain't wasting no more time. Sing the
Yeah, I
chorus.
hear it now.
Here I go again on my own,
going down the only road. So, and it's also like he's singing his harmony part
like a drifter,
that Coverdale would have been singing the lead over, you know.
I know how it feels to walk along the lonely street of dreams, and here I go again, wasting my whole life. Here I go again. What can I do? Here I go again. Here I go again. Here I go again. John Lord.
Ah, fantastic. Look at how small that place is.
Yeah, it's a tiny little venue.
My God,
Thank
could you
you.
imagine seeing those two guys in there?
Jeez, yeah, and
Thank you very much.
Amazing.
get this kind of weird treat. You're not expecting it. Like
Yeah.
like you ever see the carpool karaoke with Paul McCartney?
Mm.
It's just like he goes like he's driving around with James Corden, is it? And they go to like this small little bar, and they have like a jukebox, and they like press something on the jukebox, then the wall opens up and Paul McCartney's there and just plays the song that they just requested. Like, whoa, I didn't know I was signing up for that. And I don't know how staged that was, but it kind of reminds me of that. Like or just like, you go to see Deep Purple and you're like, wow, I'm going to see Deep Purple. This is awesome. And then John Lord raises out of the floor and you're like, holy crap. I don't know what the price on those tickets was, but they were underpriced.
Well, I say I like really versions of songs like that, where it's a little bit different, especially, I don't know, if you see anybody from, obviously, those two guys were on the original Whitesnake version before they updated it for the 87 album. But if you hear it on, like, if somebody does it, like you were saying, karaoke, or there's somebody doing it in a band, they do that. I always like that little twist on it where it's not exactly the same, because it's that familiar song that you enjoy, but they're putting their own twist on it, or they're not trying to strain to maybe hit notes that they can't hit, or they just want to do their own spin on it. Like maybe, Bernie Marsden could sing it like Coverdale, but he wanted to kind of do like you said, it kind of had a country feel to it, which I didn't quite get until you mentioned that. And I'm like, yeah, I could see that as like, that's where his voice goes. And I think that that's really cool about versions of songs like that, because it would be boring if everybody did it the exact way that it was recorded.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and that's a song I was definitely, even before I got into Deep Purple, I was tired of that song, because just growing up, you just heard it everywhere, and you're like, it's one of those songs you couldn't get away from, and you're just, I'm so tired of this song. And it's definitely it's been rekindled with me in the more recent years, and discovering the earlier Whitesnake version. It's great. So Jackie Pace says, sorry it's taken so long to put this up, but all my time has been spent with family following the sad passing of John Lord. John Lord was the husband of my twin sister, Vicky. He was father, husband, uncle, brother, brother-in-law, and friend to many. We are astounded with the incredible worldwide support and love honoring John's life and music. Thank you all so much. In 2011, John's last live performance took place at the Sunflower Jam. He was also a trustee of the charity and held this event very close to his heart. As a tribute to John, we would like to share some footage of him performing with Rick Wakeman, which we just saw, at the 2011 Sunflower Jam, the piece written by both of them for the Sunflower Jam, titled "It's Not as Big as It Was." We have been asked if the 2012 Sunflower Jam event will be taking place due to our loss, to which we would like to confirm not only will it go ahead, we are working on a tribute to John in true Sunflower style. We love you, Johnny. And that was written by Jackie Pace, Ian Pace's wife, and also the twin sister of John Lord's wife, Vicky. Behind me, I've got the All Those Years Ago John Lord book, which I hesitate to recommend because it's profoundly expensive. But it's, if you are a fan of John Lord and want to read some great passages from some of his friends and loved ones, and see some one of a kind pictures that you won't see anywhere else, it's an incredible book. Very, very well put together. I consulted Jorg before purchasing it. Jorg, of course, lets me know whenever some rare Deep Purple thing is available. Oh, by the way, there's 4 of these available on this site if you want to get it. And I asked him, and Jorg is very, what's the word? Very, very kind of straight and to the point. And I was like, is it worth it? Is it going to be worth it to buy this book? And he's like, I have not regretted my purchase. And I was like, okay, good. I'm going to get it then. It's the highest praise I could get. And yeah, it's amazing. It's a great collector's item. And I'm not really a huge collector's item guy, but it's more really just about how one of a kind it is and how great it is to kind of read about John. So, and that's it. That's kind of our closing out our John Lord tribute special. A little different than we did for our Dio tribute special, but I think we covered some good ground here tonight.
Absolutely.
Honoring someone who's been very important to us and continues to be very important to many people, and someone who continuing to discover his music. And we will be covering more albums and performances by John in the future on our show, and can't wait till we get to some more John Lord stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, and with that wraps up another episode. Next week we'll be coming to you with the son of the former Lieutenant Governor of Rhode Island for an undisclosed episode. People are like, why the hell is this person going to be coming on the show? Who is this person? Oh, well, you're going to find out. And at least one of you is going to be very surprised when you find out who that is. And I think it's one of our patrons. So thank you very much.
I know I haven't talked to him in many years.
Yeah, it's been a while since you talked to him, right? Yeah.
20-something odd years, probably.
Yeah. And we used to play a lot with his brother
Mm-hmm.
in a band, you and I. And I played with both his brother and him in bands in the past. So it's going to be a lot of fun to talk to him about this very special episode we have coming up. So
yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and we will check you next week.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.